COVID forces a man and a woman to reevaluate their marriage. I discuss this and more on today's episode. Welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I've found in my travels. Today it is Short Story Tuesday, so I wanted to talk about an interesting short story that grabbed my attention. Today's short story is all about COVID and seemingly the end of a marriage. I am referring to A World Without Men by Kathleen Alcott, which was published in 2023 in her short story collection Emergency. An interesting cover that features a naked woman kind of facing away from the camera, and it appears that there's a lamp there, among other things. It's just in general an interesting cover. For those who don't know, Kathleen Alcott is an American writer who has been writing or getting their work published since the early 2010s. She's known for writing about sort of controversial topics like AIDS and feminism and other sorts of things like that. Has a couple books to her name, and as well as a couple of short story collections. This is the only thing that I've read from her, but I would be interested in maybe checking out more if I can find it. And she's also won a number of awards for her work, or won some fellowships or other things like that. So kind of an author of note, I would say. And without further ado, let's get to A World Without Men. I will do a summary, a little bit of analysis, and we will move on from there. So A World Without Men focuses on Frankie and Shirley. They've been married for 40 years, and they are musicians at a restaurant that has live music, and they've just been working together since the 70s or something like that. But unfortunately, at the start of the story, they are furloughed because of COVID, making this like one of the few stories that I've read that have actually incorporated COVID into the narrative. They no longer have a job. They think it'll only last a couple of weeks because that's what the president is saying on TV. But it quickly becomes even longer than that. Frankie is a Vietnam veteran, having served in the Vietnam War, and kind of changed as a result of that. He's not happy with his life in music. He kind of wishes that he would have done other things, and he was happy as a pilot, so he doesn't know why he switched his career up like that. And he's fallen out of love with Shirley. He doesn't seem to have loved her like he once did, and he's not interested in having sex anymore, or even kissing her. He's kind of saying, "This isn't for me," which is strange. And meanwhile, Shirley is more of a free spirit. She loves her job, is very happy with singing, takes all of these things seriously, but she doesn't really take life seriously. It all seems very casual, somewhat of a joke to her, and she's willing to change allegiances if she wants, having voted for Democrats in the past, but now voting Republican for some bizarre reason. You could argue that maybe she's somewhat responsible for voting for Trump, which is not ideal, given all that happened with Trump and continues happening with Trump. But this is a fictional character, so we won't yell or point out her many faults. As their quarantine continues to grow, Frankie and Shirley begin growing apart. Frankie becomes distant from her, not really wanting to be around her, and Shirley is struggling to understand why all that is happening. She has no one to talk to during quarantine, and she really needs people to talk to, people to experience the same thing she's going through, or she's gonna, go through a sort of depression, not really feeling good about where she is in life. And at one point, Frankie leaves the house and goes and smokes weed with a homeless man on the beach. He gets arrested for it, and Shirley's out buying groceries, and when she gets back, the police drop him off at the house, telling him that to stay safe during this time of COVID. And when they're talking, like Shirley's like, "Is there anything else you wanted to tell me that you wanted to do this whole time?" And Frankie's like, "Yeah, I would like a divorce," which Shirley says that he's not thinking straight. But Frankie insists on it, and he even begins looking up apartments for rent in Los Angeles. And he decides that he's going to take the bus to go check out some apartments. But he doesn't seem to be wearing a mask, which bothers some people. When he's on the bus, like, there's a child that he's trying to help get up, and the family yells at him for it, and he even falls down on the bus and refuses anyone to help him get up. And so he does manage to get up, but he's embarrassed by it, so he gets off the bus and then just walks home, which is quite a ways away, and he doesn't see any apartments for rent along the way home. And as the story comes to a close, Frankie finally returns home, but he can't seem to find the key to get in, and he's yelling for Shirley, but Shirley doesn't seem to be answering, suggesting that maybe the relationship has ended to the point where she's not going to let him into the apartment, which is unfortunate. And that seems to be where the story ends there. In terms of analysis, there's a little bit we're talking about with this story. It's a very fascinating short story. Many of the short stories in this collection are interesting. They're very depressing too, as characters are going through a bit of a crisis, a bit of turmoil, and not having a good time with it. So one of the main themes that Alcott is talking about here is that of the broken marriage. Frankie and Shirley seem to be drifting apart. They are no longer in love. There's a lot that's sort of blocking the marriage from truly working, or blocking love from forming. And so Frankie is just no longer attracted to Shirley, and he doesn't seem to be attracted to life either. He feels like things haven't really gone his way. Maybe he hasn't wanted to be in music this entire time, and so he's just carefree. Which is a problem during COVID because he doesn't seem to be wearing a mask. And in fact, at the end of the story, he can no longer smell. And I wonder if that's just like a bit of fear at that moment, or maybe if he's going to catch COVID. And especially this early stage COVID was particularly deadly, and Frankie's in his 70s, so it's possible that he might die. And he doesn't really seem to care about any of that. He's kind of out of it, checked out from not only this marriage but also life, it seems. And Shirley really seems callous about Frankie. She's very she notes that like it's not good for her to point out his errors. He has to learn from his errors, and so whenever he does something bad, like he does a bunch of cocaine at one point, she's like, well, he's got to learn from that. And when it starts affecting his job, he stops. And he buys a Harley Davidson at one point, a motorcycle, and when it affects how they can afford groceries, he sells it again. And then there's other things that go on as well. Frankie is prone to fits of anger, which Shirley doesn't like, and so she still loves Frankie, but like she shouldn't love Frankie at this point. Is the point? She's maybe getting tired of his BS, of his increased distance, and it's making her unhappy. And this quarantine that they're going through only highlights a lack of love. If you're forced to stay with somebody, all of their worst qualities are going to come out, but also everything that you might have been feeling or not feeling for that person might become more apparent as well. What's interesting is that Alcott suggests that maybe this love was never there to begin with, that maybe they got married because it was convenient, that they were attracted to one another, but they never bothered to ask, what that attraction meant or if it was long-lasting. And they got married because they were happy at one point, but they've never really checked in about that marriage since then, checked in about that love. And so as time goes on, it grows distant, but because this is all you're used to, you just continue it. You don't try to stop what you're used to, something like that. And I think related to that, there's a question of, will Frankie actually leave? Yes, at the end of the story, he's kind of locked out of the apartment, but are they going to actually separate? And despite Frankie's desire to end it, I think there's a reason he comes back to the apartment at the end of the story, and that's because this is all he has known. There's a reason why he hasn't left this marriage in 40 or so years. It's because there's nothing there might be nothing else for him. This is as close as he's going to get to happiness, which is a very unfortunate, sad kind of message that Alcott is sending, is that maybe there isn't something grand in place for us in terms of love, in terms of finding our direction in the world. Maybe this is all that we have, and we can only get close approximations of happiness. It does really feel like that's what Alcott's trying to say here, which I don't necessarily agree with, but it does certainly make her writing a bit more interesting here. Alcott is also talking about quarantine in this story. So hiding from COVID, the act of, separating yourself from the world, ends up revealing the inner nature of the characters in this story. Frankie has grown incredibly distant and doesn't really care if he dies. He doesn't really care about life. He's kind of out of it, as I've noted before. And then Shirley has discovered that she needs Frankie, but he's not there. And she more so than that, she needs others to share her experience of the world. And she's not really getting that. And so she's become increasingly sad, increasingly forlorn, that word, because Frankie is gone. Allow me to read you an interesting quote from this. In an emergency, in a crisis, she had always measured her reaction against the face of the person she confessed it to, and readjusted given their calm or alarm. But the virus had happened to everyone, and rather than making her feel more connected to all life, it told her that the small details of hers didn't matter. Which is a very interesting quote, just showing how Shirley needs others in times of crisis. This is a time of crisis, but she can't turn to anyone. Like, she can't turn to Frankie about COVID and trying to reassure her that things will be better, which allows her to live that sort of carefree life, because Frankie's not there. And she can't talk to others about what's going on with Frankie because the other people aren't there. Her sister wouldn't really understand. And anyone that she might work with or anything like that isn't working with her because everyone is quarantining. So Shirley's learning a lot about herself here, and it's not good. It's revealing that she needs others, and this is the type of crisis where you can't really turn to others because that's how the virus spreads. This quarantine is COVID in general is a transformative social event. Which it was in actuality as well. This is reflective of reality, where people learned a lot about themselves, a lot about the people around them, a lot about their communities. Some of it not very good, and some of it was good, some of it was useful. It led to some divorces because people weren't happy in their relationships, but it also led to some positive things, getting out of those toxic relationships, among many other things. So Alcott is really just highlighting, one of the many things that might have happened during COVID in terms of a relationship that people thought was lasting, but it wasn't lasting. It was just there because there was nothing really providing obstacles. It was just two people who might have been happy separately, but when they're forced to be together, there's less happiness there. While I do like this story, I do think the plot is kind of bare bones, and I also think the reveal or the characters learning, the essence of the characters being revealed here, and realizing the marriage isn't working out. While it is novel in the context of COVID, I feel like other stories have done this type of story a little bit better. That's not to say this is bad. It's just I don't think this is as great as it could be. I feel like it might need to be a little bit more fleshed out to get a higher quality story that maximizes its setting and all that. Because at this point, this story is mostly psychological in the characters' heads, and there's not a lot carrying it forward. Not a lot in terms of plot. So it just I feel like Alcott could have added a little bit more to add extra oomph to this story. Anyway, those are my thoughts on A World Without Men by Kathleen Alcott. A pretty good short story. It certainly does have its problems, but I feel like it's pretty good, and paired with the other short stories in this collection, it is an interesting read. So I definitely recommend that you go and seek this out. Maybe, like me, you can find this at your local library. Don't forget to patronize your local libraries. They might have interesting short story collections. But other than that, comment below if you have anything to say about this. I would love to hear from you. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about this short story, this collection, or this author if they don't know about any of those things. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and quarantining related travels. Farewell.